Remember when Nintendo put out a first-person shooter? No, I'm not talking about Metroid Prime. I'm talking about this game, Geist. A very unique shooter where you play as a ghost that can possess unsuspecting humans for combative means. Geist was originally released for the GameCube back in 2005 and developed as a second-party exclusive by the now-defunct N-Space. It was largely seen as an attempt by Nintendo to fill the gap of mature titles they were sorely lacking on the GameCube, and despite some hype, ultimately didn't make too much of a splash. Recently, a copy came into my possession, and I figured it would be a great excuse to dust off the old GameCube and see what a Nintendo shooter looks like without good old Samus.
Get away from me!
What's up everybody, I'm Kirk, and today I'll be taking a look at Geist, to see if it's a forgotten gem or something best forgotten. But before all that, please be sure to subscribe to this channel for more videos featuring spooky stuff and bullets. Alright, let's begin. In Geist, you play as silent protagonist Raimi, a Special Forces soldier tasked with assaulting the Volk's facility, where it is believed some sort of chemical or biological weapon is being developed. Assaulting the complex, you meet up with an undercover operative, and just when the mission is looking like a success, disaster strikes and Raimi is captured. As it turns out, Volks is not developing biological weapons, but instead has found a way to weaponize human spirits to build an army of ghost operatives, and poor Raimi is the next to have his soul ripped from his body and turned into a poltergeist of espionage. But before he can be indoctrinated into this army of spectral soldiers, he is rescued by the ghost of a young girl named Gigi, who teaches Raimi the way of the ghost. And from there, Raimi sets out to stop the evil Volk, possessing and shooting along the way. Geist's story is ridiculous and had me giggling all throughout. It's like a bad B-horror sci-fi movie, but so bad it's good. You're presented with this mystery of what this nefarious organization is after, all the while trying to figure out how this ghostly little girl factors into it all. It's a setup that had me intrigued for sure, and I expected a fairly dramatic plot, but then the game will hit you with these hilarious left-turn moments that cracked me up, like having to haunt the women's shower, full of suds and tan lines, to take control of a female doctor to save your friend. And yeah, it's as goofy as you'd expect. Apparently Porky's was a big inspiration for this game. 2005, those were the days. There's also an outright disturbing sequence where you possess a grimy looking cook and poison a group of hungry soldiers with soup laced with rat poison, and just stand there grinning like a goddamn maniac as they all die in agony. Yeah, in terms of tone, this story is all over the place, and it's pretty silly. Even the devs poke some fun at it here and there. It's definitely not good, but it kept me entertained and chuckling throughout. And honestly, there's only a few ways you can handle a tale about a demonic madman cultivating a ghost army, and the devs clearly chose the fun way.
The time of man is ending.
In terms of visuals, I honestly thought Geist wasn't that bad looking of a game. It certainly wasn't the height of GameCube visuals. By this point, the system already had the first two Metroid Primes and Resident Evil 4, which did wonders with the little purple box. But Geist pulls off some nicely detailed environments and some good looking character animations that elevate the okay looking models. Playing it, I definitely felt like the Resident Evil series was a key influence on the art direction. There's a lot of juxtaposition of high-tech scientific facilities with decrepit Art Deco environments full of elaborate puzzles, and the music that plays during the monstrous boss fights reminded me a lot of the survival horror series as well. I wasn't a fan of the drab, muted color scheme though. Color variety was something a lot of shooters lacked in the mid-2000s, and while I do appreciate the few instances of Geist using color, overall the color scheme looks flat and messy, and some of the lighting when you're in ghost mode looks a little too blown out. However, I did appreciate how the game switches up the color scheme depending on which animal you possess. That's a nice touch. But by far, the biggest issue I had was the performance. Geist does not run well at all. While I can't say for sure, on average it felt like the frame rate was floating around the low to mid-20s. Pretty disappointing when you compare it to the absolute butter performance of Metroid Prime. The game was never unplayable, but virtually all the gameplay was bogged down by this.
Quick, behind you!
Get off of him!
Sound design is adequate, but the sound effects for the guns sound really soft, which is disappointing. Voice acting is decent, if not overly dramatic, with a musical score which is okay, but not super memorable. Geist basically has two modes of gameplay, Ghost Simulator and first-person shooter. Playing as a ghost, you are invisible, obviously, and time is slowed down, allowing players to think about what they're doing in more action-heavy sequences and allowing for some neat effects. You can float upwards if needed, and while you can pass through barriers like fences, you are unable to pass through walls and doors. Then again, I guess you wouldn't have much of a game if you could. But there are specific passageways you can use if you need to get from place to place. You're not invincible in this state though. As a ghost, your health will continuously drain, requiring you to drain plants of their life force to replenish or find hidden ghost collectibles to increase your total health. Although I never found myself in danger of running out of health outside of a few specific moments. The real way you get stuff done in Geist is through possession. A wide variety of inanimate objects, animals, and people can be possessed in Geist, each with their own gameplay quirk. A living host can only be possessed if they're scared. Scaring them is just a matter of possessing objects around them and making them do freaky stuff. No, TPS reports! After you possess, you can use that host to progress, whether that's just walking through a door, fixing a thing, or just lighting fools up. Sometimes you might need one living host to scare another, like taking control of a good boy and barking at a rat in order to hop into it. In my opinion, the possession concept is absolutely brilliant. I'm sure a few of you watching can't help but let your mind wander to all of the freedom and possibilities such gameplay can bring. Don't get your hopes too high though, because in execution, Geist is very limited. For starters, the game is very, very linear. Pretty much a straight line from start to finish, only opening up in a few key areas. And you can only possess whatever the game lets you possess. You can't just hop into whatever you want. And human possession, for the most part, is limited to specific puzzle sequences, where you have to take control of a series of objects in order to scare the poor host. There's nothing necessarily wrong with these sequences, and they are pretty entertaining, but the logic of them is really flimsy. For example, early in the game, you have to take control of this soldier alone in this room, so the first thing I did was hop into this fire extinguisher across from him and started making it spray everywhere. And despite the thing clearly being in his line of sight, he had no reaction to it. No, what you have to do is possess the ladder behind him and make it fall on him, then take control of the fire extinguisher, and then these steam pipes in order to scare him. That's what irked me about this game. You have to do things in the order the devs designed it, even if a more logical solution is present. Another thing that bothered me is that some hosts won't cooperate with you if they are too scared. Here we possess an engineer by scaring him with his own machinery. But when we need him to cross the room by the machinery to grab an object, the host is unable to do it because he's now too scared of the machinery. Right. So you're telling me that I can make these people do whatever I want them to do, including horrific things like, oh, I don't know, murder their coworkers, but if they're too scared, they won't cooperate? Isn't them being too scared the thing that makes them cooperate in the first place? Look, I get it. The devs placed limitations like this to facilitate more interesting gameplay, because the solution to this problem is to float across the room, possess the object you need, and roll it over to the engineer, which is clever, but feels arbitrary. The thing with Geist is that the whole time I was playing it, I couldn't help but imagine the potential its core concept could have. Huh? Imagine if you took this ghost possession mechanic and applied it to a Hitman-style game. Big open map, an objective you need to accomplish, but instead of using random objects as weapons and using disguises, you take possession of said random objects and take control of people, and the player has total agency in how they do it. That might be a tough game to make, but man, it would be a ton of fun. Or hell, what if you just built a full immersive sim around this? I mean, Prey 2017 had a mimic ability kind of similar to this. Now, maybe this was the developer's intention to begin with, and perhaps they were limited by the hardware at the time, which is understandable, but I still think the ghost aspects could have been thought out and executed better. If they were, it probably would have been enough for me to overlook the lackluster shooting portions. Combat in Geist is basic FPS fare. In fact, it's a lot more simplified as you're limited to whatever weapon your host happens to be carrying, and ammo is unlimited. Which makes sense as hopping from body to body would make ammo management kind of pointless. Most firefights take place in long hallways with a few shootouts in more open areas where enemies typically stand around waiting to get shot. It's not terribly exciting stuff. What does make it interesting is being able to use your ghost powers to get the advantage, like taking over a turret to mow down your adversaries or possessing explosive objects to blast the baddies away in a glorious display of debris and ragdolls. But sadly, moments like these are not as common as I'd like, and I think there's a huge missed opportunity in not finding more ways to use your ghost powers in combat. It's a very average shooter made worse by sluggish controls. Aiming feels strained and laborsome, like you're pushing that right stick through mud, and you can't adjust the sensitivity. And I gotta say, I love the GameCube controller. Love it. But it's not great for shooters. Aiming with that little C-stick nubbin is not super comfortable. Oh, there's other control styles, but they're not much better. The game features quite a few boss fights, which are fine for the most part, but some of them feel like they were thrown in as filler. For example, you fight this hanging monster thing 3 times, and the fight doesn't change much other than the thing having more maneuverability, and you using different weapons. It's not a very interesting battle though. You just dodge its projectiles and then shoot its mouth when it opens. Rinse, repeat. The weapons at least feel good to fire, nice and punchy feeling with a decent shotgun, but it's not enough to save the shooting. Geist is a great concept stuck inside a mediocre game. I did have some fun with it, mostly because of its so bad it's good plot and entertaining possession moments, but as a shooter it leaves a lot to be desired. I will stand by saying that I do think the central concept is brilliant, and I hope a talented developer someday takes it and makes something truly special. Who knows? Otherwise, this is not one you need to go out of your way to play. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on Geist in the comments and if you played it back in the day. And if you know of a game like Geist that you think I might enjoy, let me know. I'm pretty smitten by this ghost possession concept. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share with your friends. It is a massive help for this channel. Hey, speaking of shooters with ghost girls, be sure to check out my video on Fear, which funny enough came out the same year as Geist and was a whole lot better. I post videos weekly, so be sure to ring that bell so you are the first to see them. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.